Welcome back to hell. I'm your ferryman on this terrible Tuesday evening. Looking back on the last video where I reacted to comments, I realize now that, going over the news kind of lends to a bloated runtime. I think the video was 47 minutes? So since I don't really care about the news, let's just go through it real quick. The French government is collapsing, which it's not. They voted to collapse it. So I think that's a bit hyperbolic. They're just trying to form a new government because they didn't like their old one because the centrists and the right, whatever. Too much detail. Who cares? Joe Biden pardoned his son despite saying that he wouldn't do that. And so Joe Biden has pretty much single-handedly destroyed the Democratic Party, which is good. And the streamer known as Destiny was caught not with his pants down. It was another man who had his pants down, which to be fair, I don't think is really that newsworthy because apparently he has in the past stated that he is bisexual. So it's not really the scandalous thing that people would like to think that it is. Because I controversially agree when a straight man, or at least a man who is claiming to be straight, is caught doing gay things, that should be, society should be able to look at that and say, hey, that's kind of like when a middle-aged man goes out and buys a Ferrari and gets frosted tips. There's nothing wrong with any of that in and of itself, but when you're a middle-aged man and you do that, we call that a midlife crisis. When a straight man is gay, that's weird. What else? There was a 2-hour coup in North Korea. I don't know. I don't care. What I do care about is black-pilling you guys into having crippling depression. Misery loves company, and I've tried calmly explaining to people, hey, we need to be a little more concerned about how our society is intellectually on the decline. To which people just go, you're overreacting. So let me go ahead and show you guys the comments I get just in the span of a week. Starting with a little experiment I did. This is on a video where I was talking, not really even talking, I was making a joke. It was a video in response to how Joe Biden is pretty much trying to escalate us into World War III. And so I was pretending to be a Democrat or a leftist, and I was like, well, this is awful, but at least we can still kill our babies, right? And people did not like that. I thought it was funny. And I kind of performed a little bit of a social experiment here for you guys, because there was a comment that someone left, what do you think Biden should be doing to fulfill our obligation to protect Ukraine? I think obligation is a bit of a strong word there, but for once, rather than just passive-aggressively talking behind this person's back, as I'm doing right now where you see this video, I actually responded to this person. And I said, quote, not escalate it during the last month of his presidency. Given how little he did during his presidency, I don't think that's asking for much. Now, you would think that that's a calm, rational response. Don't start World War III. But instead, the person replies and plays dumb. In what way is he escalating it? He gave Ukraine long-range missiles yesterday. He had earlier said he wouldn't do this because it could escalate the war. Russia has now changed their nuke strategies and are threatening to use nukes. Russia threatening to use nukes in Ukraine is not new. And that's a mentality that was shared by a lot of people on this video. For example, someone comments, con schizo moment, nothing ever happens. But that's an astronomically bad take to think that nothing ever happens. This is literally what I was talking about last week. I showed the video. I made a video talking about how people become too complacent in current events. And this is exactly what I'm talking about. We get this mentality that nothing ever happens, and that's absurd. Things are constantly happening. You can say Russia threatening to use nukes in Ukraine is not new. The issue is Ukraine using long-range missiles is. And I was trying to be a little more respectful this time because the point of this experiment was to show you guys, you can talk with these people and it's gonna do nothing. And so I'm sorry if this is a little too sassy for some of you, but such a cope response. If in the Roman Empire there was a man who said, Rome will fall today, eventually he'd be right. Because that's how that works. And in fact, this entire argument was before Russia used ICBMs. Some people have left comments on my videos saying, oh, they were not ICBMs, it was IRBMs, or intermediate range ballistic missiles, whatever acronym that is. And even in that, it's not just intermediate range. It's kind of something that they're having a little bit of a difficulty in classifying because it's in between intermediate range and intercontinental. And so I'm pretty sure it still was nuclear capable. And so this aged poorly, this nothing ever happens, Russia threatening to use nukes in Ukraine is not new. We are objectively one step closer to nuclear war. Whether or not it happens, sure, it may not happen, it probably won't happen. But this was unnecessary escalation. And the response to this is exactly why I'm never nice to people. So Biden authorized these long-range missiles just because? Or was there perhaps a reason Why are we playing the devil's advocate for escalation towards war? Why do we have to assume that there's a good reason? And I was pretty good about this because I actually, rather than saying that, just stuck to the facts. Notice how you didn't actually address my comment. You just want to move on to, well, there has to be a reason, rather than acknowledging that this is an escalation that brings us closer to nuclear war. And then I'm not sure what the first part of this next comment is supposed to mean. If it is in response to a Russian escalation, it matters. Is this person saying, like, whatever I make up as an excuse as to why there could possibly be a reason, well, it matters? No, it doesn't. It's an excuse that you made up and you don't know why he did this. You can't just give someone the benefit of the doubt for nuclear war, for World War III. At least the second half here, or should we just follow Chamberlain's example of appeasement? This is something that I've long thought about with Putin and Russia, because if you were actually taught properly in your American history class, you should know about World War II and you should know about the appeasement of Adolf by Chamberlain. Chamberlain was the British Prime Minister. He said, okay, you get the Rhineland, but please stop attacking people. And guess what? Crazy, bloodthirsty, world-dominating dictators don't stop when you just wag your finger and tell them, please don't. And so I understand where this comment is coming from, but as I say, that comparison is a little weak considering Adolf didn't have nukes. I go on to say something probably needs to be done about Russian expansionism, but again, Biden literally rushed this in because Harris lost. That itself is the biggest issue. You can argue that Ukraine has a right to defend itself, but with peace talks looming, this is needless escalation. Do you have an argument against that alone? And when you spend so much time arguing people as I do, you will find that it's almost intentional. It's probably subconscious, but it is intentional. People will know what you are saying and choose to ignore you. Things don't happen in a vacuum, my dude. I'm not saying to ignore the context of the situation. I'm asking you if you have an argument for how it was handled rather than that something needs to happen in general. And so this was the final reply. I mean, you are saying to ignore the context, though. You want me to talk about this one event, which itself was a reaction to another event, which in turn was a reaction to another, and so on. What are you talking about? I am asking you to tell me what justifies how it was handled. Not that something needs to happen. That the way this was handled was right. Because this is why I get so upset with people. I mean, I'm not super pro-Ukraine, but for all intents and purposes, we can say that this person and I agree on everything else. You know, I agree something should be done about Russia. I agree Ukraine has a right to defend itself. I don't necessarily agree with sending them as much aid as we have. I think in the long run, a lot of people need to accept that it's better than ever getting directly involved in the war. But this is the issue. This brings us closer to being directly involved in the war. And I just want a simple answer from this person. Why was this handled correctly? Why do you think this was handled correctly? And there is no response. Because this is not someone with an opinion. You guys need to stop thinking that. We have this cultural delusion that, oh, well, people just have different opinions and you need to learn how to agree to disagree. No, there are people who are brainwashed. They are told, defend this position no matter what. You don't actually have to be informed. You don't have to know what you're talking about. Just defend it no matter what. And those people do not deserve your respect. They do not deserve a rational response. Because do you see what happens when you give a rational response? They throw it away. And I can promise you that this is what has happened every time for the past 6 years that I have tried to engage with someone in a conversation. These people are just mentally ill. Here's another comment. You're right. We're closer than ever. We are on the bleeding edge of nothing happening. Even if nothing does happen, how is this a good thing? You guys are just delusional. Here on the same video, don't drag leftists into this. That's squarely libs. Lol, you are closer to a Democrat than a Democrat is to a leftist. I'm really sick and tired of crazy leftists refusing to be educated to Google basic definitions. Leftist, a person with left-wing political views. That's the definition of leftist. Left-wing, the section of a political party or system that advocates for greater social and economic equality and typically favors socially liberal ideas. Semicolon, which means this is essentially explaining everything that came before, the liberal or progressive group or section. If you go back to the French Revolution, the dichotomy of left and right is because the French aristocrats sat on the right and the liberals sat on the left. Liberals are leftists. When you try to redefine the term, it's just because you are a mentally deranged Marxist and you want to expand the political spectrum. You want to expand the Overton window, and it should not be expanded. Your delusions should not be considered political opinions. a lot of Democrats and liberals are already too far to the left. And I think right now we're seeing a little bit of a cultural correction, and you're going to be in for a rude awakening. People are sick of this, sick of being forced to believe that they have to tolerate far-left ideas, and hopefully enough people will watch these videos and realize, oh, no, we shouldn't. We shouldn't tolerate this mindset. We should say, hey, no, you're just mentally ill. Someone commented on this first comment, you're all the same. You're either the baby-killing World War III supporting crazy, or you're the terrorist supporting death to America kind of crazy. Let's not sugarcoat crazy. 100%. Because let's just lightning round through some of these here. Here are comments from various videos. Nick, why do you block me? Stop lying online. Is that a rational person? Somebody I have to block and then comes back with an alt account to prove why I should block that person? And then this person still has this protagonist syndrome of, oh, I'm going to expose your lies. Stop lying online. No, that's someone who has delusions of grandeur. And this is why I block people. This is not the first time this has happened. This is not even like I was in the middle of a conversation with someone, I blocked that person. It is no, I will block these people. They have no way of knowing that I've blocked them, but they are so obsessed with either me or something to do with, again, their protagonist syndrome, that they actively come back and they see who's commenting on my videos because they want to engage with it, because they're the arbiters of truth, the heroes of the story. No, you're just insane. Just go away, please. Trump doesn't need your help. Who cares what you think about 100,000 people on TikTok, 1,000 people here on YouTube? I'm sure you'll find a job at McDonald's. I'm not going to do that. I have never worked a minimum wage job in my entire life, and that would be a waste of my qualifications. Still under the delusion that we GAS what you think, like getting advice from a 2-year-old. Yes, because 2-year-olds are the people who put out rational arguments explaining why something is true, and mature adults are the ones who say, oh, I don't care what you think. You are too young and too high-strung to try to make this argument. Wait 30 years and try again. So I've always called this out, but I'm glad to see that it's actually true. Because when I was younger and people would tell me, oh, you'll find out when you're older, I was like, that's just going to be a goalpost that's going to continue to move my entire life. And it is. I am 26 years old. I am almost 30. What do you mean I'm too young? Wait 30 years? What the hell are you talking about? You are a delusional old man, and if any of you ever have to hide behind the argument of, oh, well, you'll find out when you're older, I have some unfortunate news for you. You are not an intellectual and you have wasted your entire life not learning a goddamn thing. If wisdom comes with age, then by God, you should be able to form coherent arguments as to why you think someone is wrong. If you cannot, you're just an old moron rather than a young moron. Won an imaginary argument with myself award. Okay, so this was on that first video we were discussing. For one, wasn't even having a fictional dialogue. I was just pretending to be one character saying things. That's not an argument with myself. That's just making fun of someone. Two, I hate when I see these comments online. Virtually every book Plato ever wrote was a dialogue. In philosophy, dialogues are fictional conversations. Every single book that Plato wrote was him winning arguments with himself. I get that a lot of people are dishonest with that medium now. They intentionally strawman other people's positions and form weak arguments that they can win against. But you can't just say stuff like this that's this vague. Actually attack why someone is misrepresenting a position rather than just being like, you can't pretend to have a conversation with yourself. Those are easy to win. Tell that to Plato. Okay, boomers. Not a boomer. Not plural people as well. This is from a video where I take like 8 minutes to explain how morality is objective. Morality is subjective though. Oh my god. Cut the video. I know I've been making fun of these people this entire time, but this one person going, nuh-uh, has changed my entire perspective on life. No, it hasn't. Who cares? Like you said something deep. Deeper than you can go, am I right? Incorrect. Boo. Literally, someone commented boo. Like, why? Why is that not a waste of your time? Why do you guys not realize that that's a waste of your time? And I get like dozens of comments like that a week, so you guys can let me know if I should keep including those into the video or if I should just use my judgment and say, well, you know, this doesn't really offer anything to actually talk about. So let's just go ahead and move on to some brain rot that at the very least is a little more substantive. These comments are from a video I did where I discussed the difference between book smart and street smart and how I controversially, apparently it's controversial, said book smart is not a thing. Specifically, if you're talking about the definition that I showed in this video, which is frustratingly the point of most of these comments. For example, that's not exactly what street smart is referring to in general. Someone with street smarts would actually know that. Hope this helps. No, it doesn't, you condescending prick. Street smart doesn't mean knowing how to apply knowledge, it just means you're kinda socially intelligent and are good with people. Assigning your own definitions to well-established terminology makes your whole video count as actually pseudo-intellectualism. If you're going for self-deprecating satire, well done. Otherwise, meh. Again, this was not my definition. I had to say it here in this comment on this video, and apparently this guy didn't read it. I say, guys, I literally flashed the definition on screen, and here it is again. I literally flashed the definition on screen and made a point of saying that there are different ways of interpreting book smart and street smart. And so when people misinterpret what I am saying, pretty much intentionally, that's not my fault. You can't just watch a video where I gave you the definition and I said, if you don't use this definition, you're fine. I'm talking specifically about this definition, and then tell me that I'm making up my own definitions. Because, for example, here someone says, it's weird because you say there's no such thing as book smart. You flash a definition of how most people view book/street smart, claim that it's only a term used by actually pseudo-academics, not really what I said, and then in the comments say that you're not talking about the way other people use the expression. I overall get what you're actually trying to say. Clearly not. If you know about something but don't really know how to apply it, then you don't really know that thing. Which, to be fair, yeah, that's what I said. But I feel like you could have just explained that better rather than using terms different than how most people use them. I'm confused there because at the beginning you said I flashed the definition on screen that most people use. So how am I not using it the same way when that's the definition that I'm using? The meaning of words change based on how most people use them. Okay, yeah, but again, you've contradicted yourself several times throughout this single comment. One more time, here's the definition, and I will go over it. I have on the screen of my video what I mean. Having a lot of academic knowledge learned from books, but not necessarily knowing much about people and living in the real world. So let's go over this one more time because apparently that's confusing for some people. I explicitly say in the video, and as this person acknowledged here, that I'm not talking about specific interpretations. If your interpretation of that is that the real world doesn't mean like the actual application of knowledge, and it instead just means like knowing how to file your taxes, knowing how to ask for directions, knowing how to survive on the streets, then that's not what I'm talking about. I explicitly say that in the video. What I'm talking about is especially an interpretation of Booksmart that most of you are presenting here in the comments, despite the fact that many of you are disagreeing with me. For example, I don't know if this specific person is disagreeing with me or not, but this comment reads, Booksmart just means you are good in school. Does mean intelligent. I think that should be doesn't mean intelligent. Being intelligent just means problem-solving skill. Yes. Exactly. People who are thought of as being street smart are typically thought of as being resourceful, i.e. problem-solving skills. And being book smart just means you are knowledgeable about academia, about stuff like that. It does not mean intelligent. And that's the point of my video. People keep coming to me and they're like, oh, you should just make this video about knowledge and wisdom. It's like, no, it's perfectly fine as it is. You guys are just arguing against the definitions for whatever reason. I understand, again, that there are different ways to interpret these definitions. But when, in a video, I say, if you use this interpretation, I'm not arguing you, and then you guys choose to make it about yourselves despite that, then I'm going to call you an idiot, because that's what you are. Knowledge and application are two sides of the same coin. You can't have one without the other. Your definition of book smart and street smart doesn't hold up either. It's not my definition. It's not one or the other. Book smart and street smart both use knowledge and application in their own ways. Book smart just pertains to academia, and street smarts is acquired without formal education with real-world implication. Okay, but again, the idea that both necessitate the other is not true. If I just recite information, I can recite information without understanding it. I can pull up my computer right here and look up a phrase in French, and I can recite that phrase. Doesn't mean I know what it means. So actually, yes, you can have one without the other. I'm pretty sure street smart just means knowing how to avoid problems with the local urban community, like when Speed stops Aiden from doing some hand thing that represents a gang affiliation, and then the same person replied to when I said, I block people for being annoying, because I do. If you guys get upset at me in this video because you don't like what I'm saying here, guess what? Piss off. And so this is what this person says in response. Are you being serious right now? Please tell me that this is satire. I genuinely want to do bad things to people who block anyone that disagrees with them. And so first of all, these are this person's pronouns. Please respect them if you can, I guess. I don't know what I'm looking at either. But I hate it when people are tough online. Nobody's tough online. It is so easy to act tough behind a computer screen. And so back in the past, before I just started blocking people left and right, anytime someone would act like this, I'd just say, okay, tell me where you live. Name a place. Because I hate it. It's so annoying. If any of you are so tough, name a time and a place, and I will break you in half like a stick. Otherwise, please shut the hell up. And I think this is the same person, Lamau. There's no way you blocked me over that, and then replied with a bunch of other stuff. I mean, we've already gone through this enough. Moving on, we have one comment from this video. In this video, I explain how free will has to exist, because in order to say that free will is an illusion, you have to have some standard to compare it to, such to say that this is real free will, and we don't have it. But the issue is, once you do that, then you say, well, this is real free will, and you've instantiated that free will exists. It's a little more complicated than that, just trying to keep it brief. Here we have, but someone could describe what the stick was, and you could observe that their description, even in vague terms, is not there. The issue with free will is that if we're being honest, it's just a feeling of freedom of choice, and then the observation of our decision-making process, making it seem our sensation of freedom is justified, neither of which prove that feeling and the process are actually free. Okay, so the latter half of that comment is an example of something that I'm constantly talking about. I mean, at least the first half is a refutation, but I really don't like it when people make affirmative arguments and then pretend as though they are rebuttals, because they're not. If it is your claim that this Rubik's Cube is unsolved, and it is my claim that it is solved, I can't simply go, oh, well, this side's solved, and then once you point out that there are other sides that are not solved, I just go, oh, well, this side's solved. I can't do that. I can't just say, here's an affirmative argument that proves my point. Oh, you have a rebuttal? Well, this is another affirmative argument that proves my point. Any one of these sides, where it is not complete, proves that the Rubik's Cube as a whole is not complete. So I'm not sure what this latter half is besides just saying that free will is an illusion, which I've disproven. And the rebuttal on the first half of this comment does not disprove the proof that I gave. But someone could describe what the stick was, and you could observe that their description, even in vague terms, is not there. No, you could not. Not in vague terms, you have to know what a stick is. And you can know what a stick is by knowing all the composite parts of a stick. For example, you can say that it's brown, it's made out of wood, it's shaped like this, whatever. But that is still giving someone knowledge of what a stick is. You can't have knowledge of something that doesn't exist and doesn't make any sense. So this isn't a rebuttal. You can think of a unicorn, because a unicorn is a horse with a horn on it. How do you think of free will if free will doesn't exist? You can't just take the deterministic nature of reality if we assume that reality is deterministic and negate that. Because what does it mean to negate determinism? That could be probabilistic, that could be free will, it could be anything. We don't know what that means. The only way we could know what it means to have free will is if we have free will. For example, if I said this Rubik's Cube wasn't real, but I assumed that everything else around me was real, you could probably make some argument that it's like everything else around me. It interacts with everything else around me. But there's an issue that comes with thinking that nothing is real. If nothing is real, what is your standard such to say that nothing is real? You have to have something that's real. If this is all an illusion, then it's not, because it's the most real thing we have to talk about. And so saying that free will is an illusion is a lot like that. It's a lot like denying the nature of everything, rather than just saying, here is one thing that I can make up that doesn't exist. That's not what I'm saying. I am saying that free will is the ability to make up things that don't exist. It is the ability to think beyond prior conditions. Because when you have all these prior material conditions influencing you in some way, but you are capable of thinking beyond that, and you say, here, this is what I'm going to do instead, that is a free choice. And so we have to be able to look at nature and say, okay, well, where do we get the concept of free will from then, if it is an illusion? And there's nowhere that we get it from. We get it from the fact that it exists. And so that doesn't actually challenge my argument. And as I'm always saying, would you be surprised to learn that this person left another comment on another one of my videos? And here's where someone could probably say, like, oh, you don't think people are entitled to criticize you? For one, yes. I shouldn't say not entitled, but how do I put this? I don't want you to. Because again, as I'm trying to demonstrate here, it's never successful. There's never going to be a productive conversation. And more to that point, more than just saying that people are not allowed to criticize me, when people leave multiple things of criticism, it's like, do you think we're actually going to have productive conversations about all these things? You think I'm actually going to be able to have multiple conversations with you when, again, there's more people out there than just you? No, when you leave like these long criticisms criticisms on my video and you do that on multiple videos, you're just talking to talk. And so speaking of narcissism, this is on a video talking about how using pronouns is a bit narcissistic. Because when I'm talking to you, all I ever need to know are you, yours, yourself. That's not a pronoun, but you get the point. When you use third-person pronouns, they're third person. I would only need to use them when I'm talking about you to other people. So introducing your pronouns immediately implies that you think I'm going to talk about you when you're not around. And so here's the comment. Narcissism is to validation like murder is to fighting someone. It takes a deep obsession with validation and other issues to be diagnosed as a narcissist. I'm not really talking about like the clinical definition of narcissism here. Also, pronouns are more important to how we view ourselves than you're letting on. No, that's the issue. Imagine you are being recognized at an awards ceremony, and as they talk about you, they constantly refer to you as she. Okay. Assuming you are a man, that probably doesn't sit right. I don't care. That discomfort isn't narcissistic rage. Yes, it is, because I don't feel that. Normal people don't feel that. It's a natural sensation that comes when our innate social infusion of our sexuality and gender is uprooted by someone. No, it's narcissistic rage. Imagine somebody walks up to you and says, "Hey, your skin is blue. You are the color blue." You're probably going to be taken aback. You're not going to be like, "This undermines how I view myself." And if it does, that's not healthy. You shouldn't allow yourself to question basic and fundamental truths about yourself so easily. And if you do, that's insecurity, and that's not a good thing. People should be happy with themselves and be happy with their own bodies. And that's kind of what I don't like about the trans movement in general. I am actually, I would say, more trans accepting than people who claim to be trans accepting. Because I don't really like how terms like man and woman have been appropriated to refer to psychological gender rather than biological sex. But other than that, like, okay, you're masculine, good for you. You're effeminate, good for you. I don't have any problem with that. And so I see it as really sad when society convinces a person, "Oh, I was born as a man, and I have this view that I derived from society that men are masculine, they exhibit these characteristics, so I'm wrong, I'm broken." I would say to that person, no, you're not broken. You can be effeminate if you want to be. Whereas the politically correct thing to do is say, "Oh, well, if you think you're broken, then I accept that." If you say you're broken, then yes, you are. Like, no, just normalize tomgirls and tomboys and stop forcing people to reconsider who they are in order to accept who they are. Because this entire movement is just confusion and seeking validation and narcissism, and it shows. You guys never know how to defend your own arguments, because here we just have people going, "That's not how it works." Huh? And then just the same arguments. So you would be okay if people addressed you with she, her pronouns. Sure, I don't care. I would be confused at best, and that would be it. Somebody responds to this, I think some of the point is that at what point would you even use she, her, he, him when speaking to me? Then even further, why would I expect you to reinforce my self-perception to others when talking about me? I don't know about you, but I don't need you to profess to other people through pronoun usage that I am a man. Exactly. You are confident in who you are, and you don't need other people to validate you. That is a good thing. And these people just seriously keep responding with, "So you would be okay if I addressed you as she, her, and called you Melinda." Like, they have no other argument. Bro, John Money was a legit psycho. TF, would you ever tie yourself to him? Philosophically weirdo. I didn't. I said he redefined language. Did I just Porky Pig? I said. No, that's not Porky Pig. That's Foghorn Leghorn. What the hell am I talking about? As someone with a ton of LGBTQ friends, I'd say that that's not entirely true. I've seen plenty of videos that might back up what you're saying, but in my experience, putting pronouns in bios or initial introductions is just telling you that you may not perceive me the way I do. So if I want you to talk about me later, these are the ways to do so in the way that I see myself. There are people that go way overboard and try to force people to use their pronouns. That is the absolute wrongest way to go about it, but there are instigators out there on both sides. On both sides, you say? If everyone could voice their opinions and have civil discussions, again, on both sides, we'd be better off. I kind of agree with that last point there, but just again, why do I need to know how you perceive yourself? Why is the onus there placed on me? If I think of myself as being smart and handsome, everybody watching this video, do you have to go out and tell people, "Hey, this guy online, he thinks he's smart and handsome"? Actually, more than that. You can't just say he thinks he is. How invalidating of you. You have to say, "I am those things. I am handsome." And then people like this will probably just respond, "Oh, that's different. That's different. That's different." No, it's not. It's not different. It is how you perceive yourself. It is really weird that we have decided that there are specific ways in which people perceive themselves that others have to acknowledge and accept. And it just shouldn't be that way. And you shouldn't place so much importance on how you perceive yourself, really. At least in superficial ways like gender. There's clearly no attempt here to be masculine. I mean, I guess I grew out my facial hair, but I don't know. I'm not like one of those blonde-haired, blue-eyed gym bros. You know what I'm saying? I never really think to myself as I look in the mirror like, you are a man. You are masculine. Like, who does that? I don't care how I am perceived, or I don't even really have a way of perceiving myself. That's kind of how I arrive at my issue with the transgender movement. I understand that, like, the way people look at me and recognize me is the same as how I would look and recognize this and say, this is a cube. The cube doesn't get offended when I call it a cube. I'm not going to get offended when people call me a man. I'm not going to get offended if people think I'm a woman and they refer to me as that woman over there. I do not care. I both agree and disagree to this. You really need context on the situation. If someone is actively mislabeling you out of ignorance, a quick, polite correction is appropriate. But if you lead with said information or push the subject, yes, that's inappropriate. I speak as a trans person, and the real struggle is it can be difficult being seen as your preferred gender, especially when you're early in transition and your birth traits push through more than you can yet control. So what, it's inappropriate to misgender people when you've told them your gender? Guess what? Affirmative, rebuttal. Give me a rebuttal. Don't care. Moving on. Although actually, before we move on, I just noticed this with these comments. Do you guys notice how at the bottom, it's recommending that I say pro-trans stuff? Like the autofill. The autofill here is saying, yeah, it's not really about forcing anyone to do anything. It's about establishing an understanding. That's crazy. I feel like here soon, we could very well have like AI-enforced good think, you know? The whole biology thing is a moot point because trans individuals on HRT aren't their biological sex assigned at birth. Okay, so first of all, most importantly, again, affirmative rebuttal, actually make a rebuttal. Because in that video, I just say, I think it's the same thing I said earlier. I have a problem with appropriation of language. This used to refer to biology, but this is what I think. I think you should be yourself, blah, 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 blah. And so that's an aside. You're attacking my video for like a quick little aside that I did. I guess, it may be too defensive to say that I get to present information and then that information is free from criticism. So I guess you can count it as a part of the argument I make in the video, but it's still like you're ignoring what I said in the rest of the video for one little thing. And that one little thing you are insanely wrong about. First and foremost, let's get the point clear. It's that before John Money, man and woman used to refer to biology. That's the point that you're saying is moot. So here's the issue. Even if we assume that what you're saying here about HRT is true, it would still be the case that man and woman referred to biological men assigned at birth, biological women assigned at birth, until HRT. That would still be the same argument structure, and even then, it would still be the case that it is biological men assigned at birth and biological women assigned at birth indefinitely. HRT doesn't retroactively make you not a man assigned at birth, not a woman assigned at birth. And finally, HRT does not change your biological sex. That's just not true whatsoever. If you are on hormone therapy, you're not going to suddenly, grow a pair of testicles. You're not going to suddenly grow a pair of testicles. You're not going to suddenly be able to reproduce as the opposite sex. You guys just live in a world of your own imagination. This is from a video where I talked about how the Democrats need to accept that they've been lied to by their own leaders. Donald Trump was a threat to democracy until he won, and then Kamala Harris congratulated him. I think it's more acceptance than anything. The fact that she's helping with the transition doesn't mean she changed her opinion. Also, what's the point of still attacking Kamala Harris now that she's lost anyway? You won, yay, no need to add salt to the wound. I think that last part is actually pretty interesting, pretty ironic, because it's like the very thing that you're accusing me of. You think I'm adding salt to the wound as if this is like some tribalistic partisan, as if I'm a bad winner, like this is a game. This is not a game. You were wrong, and I'm trying to help you understand why you were wrong. And again, I think these are very similar to comments that I covered in the last reaction video, but there's a difference between helping the transition and saying, hey, I congratulated him. Why do you have to congratulate him? There's just so much from Democrats that's showing us, hey, they never really believed that he was a threat to democracy, and you're just still ignoring that. The remainder of our comments come from two videos, both where I essentially talk about Marxism. In the first, moderates versus Marxists. What did I talk about? I think I talked about how when you think that you're this advocate for social justice and you wonder why people are so bigoted and not agreeing with you, it's because they don't believe in Marxism. A lot of views of oppressed versus oppressor, that's all Marxism. And in the next video, Oppressed versus Oppressor, I go on to explain the dynamics of Marxism. I explain how it's never going to be helpful to view the world as oppressed versus oppressor, because when you give the oppressed power, you're simply making them the oppressor. So here from the first video we have, did you seriously suggest the 21st century Republican Party has the same values as the 19th century party? That the current Republicans would also fight to end slavery? Yes. Yes, I did. And you've been told Republicans are racist. Oh, so of course they wouldn't do that. No, you're brainwashed. Like, all right, move on. For the sake of argument, I will act as a non-Marxist. So why is taking any aspect of Marxism, which is used in many other beliefs, they're not, make someone a Marxist? Because when your belief system is a derivation of another belief system, then your belief system is a derivation of that belief system. And if any of your beliefs are the same as those in the original belief system, then you are the same in that regard. Marx is praised for his ideas, even by capitalists. No, he's not. Just because its origins are somewhere doesn't mean those ideas are determined by the belief system in which they were founded. Yes, it does, unless they've changed, which they haven't, so yes, it does. You have to address the arguments, not the origin. That's like basic ad hominem fallacy stuff. No, that's the genetic fallacy, but nice try. So I guess I should just go ahead and address this here, because this is going to be a common mistake throughout the rest of these comments. Where this person says that this aspect is used in many other belief systems, it's not. Where is a belief in oppressed versus oppressor used in any other belief system? Name one system of beliefs. Conservatism? No. Libertarianism? No. Anarcho-capitalism? No. Minarchism? No. The only thing that we even get close to using these belief systems are like social liberalism. But there, when we talk about intersectionality, we're talking about conflict theory, which is a derivation of Karl Marx. Again, this is going to be a point of contention because apparently some of these people have not taken sociology courses. I was taught this in my college sociology course. The founder of conflict theory is Karl Marx. The father of conflict theory is Karl Marx. If you look that up, it's not going to be like a well-kept secret, it's well known. And so a social liberal who believes in intersectionality is a social liberal who's tainted by Marxism. When you look at the origins of social liberalism, it comes from classical liberalism, and so does conservatism, and so does libertarianism. They are all derivations of classical liberalism. And does classical liberalism believe in oppressed versus oppressor? No, it does not. You can be an oppressor, but that's only if you are an individual who does oppressing. When I say that Marxism is about oppressed versus oppressor, that is because the first chapter of the Communist Manifesto, after you get past the introduction, is literally Karl Marx saying, the history of all hitherto existing society is a history of class struggles. Free man and slave, patrician and plebeian, lord and serf, guildmaster and journeyman. In a word, which is not a word, oppressed versus oppressor. That is the basis of Marxism. That is how he begins his entire argument. Any ideology that looks at the world through a lens of oppressed versus oppressor is Marxist. That's what it means to be Marxist. This is, I've been in this cardboard box of a set for nearly 2 hours now. I'm not reading this. Not invented by Marx, nor a concept he supported, and especially not in this, I'm not sure why TikTok allowed that, moral sense. No, we literally just read it. It's the first goddamn chapter. Sorry that there isn't a Subway Surfer right here. Me when I don't understand logic of power, so just you. Because here this person says power stems from social structures, not from any kind of demographics. Again, my video was about how if you give power to the oppressed, you make them the oppressor. If I believe that power was inherent to demographics, how would we give power from one demographic to another? I'm making an argument that necessitates that it stems from social structures, not that it stems from demographics. So you literally just don't have basic comprehension skills, which isn't surprising because you're a Marxist. Weirdly similar to the other comment, but this is on the other video. If the right wing was always the governing power, do you think women or minorities would have ever gained rights? Yes, because for women at least, that's exactly what happened. What was it, like the women's temperance movement was the group that gave us women's suffrage, and weren't they the same people who fought for prohibition? I mean, you could argue that they weren't conservatives because they weren't trying to conserve the existing social order, but I mean, like, they were fundamentalist Christians. Yes, I mean, a lot of this I think just stems from the party switch myth, but Joe Biden is a living example that that myth is a myth. Joe Biden supported segregation and said he didn't want future generations to be raised in a racial jungle. He didn't switch over to becoming a Republican. He's still a Democrat. And as recently as when he was Obama's VP, he said that neither him nor Obama were for gay marriage. The Democrats are not the party of progress and of freedom and of giving people rights. They are the party where LBJ allegedly said this, and this has held true, because all they ever do is convince you guys that they are the good guys, and they are not. They are using you as a voting bloc. They are using you as a subservient voter base. Marx never said power equals oppressor. Please God, I am begging you to read something, anything, even the smallest pamphlet, just read something. I've read it. That didn't make me look very intelligent. I had it upside down, but see, I even went through with a highlighter. I highlighted things, important things. It's not a lot that he says in the Communist Manifesto that's actually, like, relevant, because people just believe that he said whatever they want him to have said. And I mean, I'll give it to you that Karl Marx never explicitly said that power equals oppressor, but let's assume that it doesn't. Like, how does that make any sense? What makes somebody the oppressor then? Because it seems to be the exploitation of the working class through capital, but that's just an extension of political power, as Karl Marx says. So no, power is what makes you the oppressor. Critical theory, anti-Marxist? No, that's not true. Whenever someone like me says, oh, well, critical race theory is Marxist, you guys always want like a through line of how it's Marxist. And I mean, that does exist. For example, W.E.B. Du Bois, he was a Marxist, and he influenced, who was it, Derek Bell, and I mean, among many others. And they are the founders of critical race theory. So yes, you actually do have a through line of Karl Marx to Du Bois to Bell. But even if that didn't exist, what you guys don't seem to understand is what I said earlier. Normal people do not believe in oppressed versus oppressor. That comes from Marxism. So critical theory is not something we can prop up in terms of classical liberalism. In classical liberalism, we look at the responsibility of the individual. But that's not what critical theory is about. That's quite literally the opposite of what critical theory is about. Critical theory is about looking at society as a whole. And so cry me a river anytime someone points out that actually, yes, critical race theory is about collectivizing society with like very Marxist and Hegelian interpretations of like Geist and character and, oh, well, this is racist, not because it does racist things, but because it has a racist history, a racist character to it. That doesn't make any sense from a point of view like classical liberalism. You say, this is racist if it does racist things. This is oppressive if it does oppressive things. That is classical liberalism, and that is functionalism. The alternative to that is Marxism and communism. The alternative to that is Marxism and conflict theory. And Karl Marx is regarded as the father of conflict theory. So that is just to say Marxism and Marxism. Bro does not understand Marxism, dialectical materialism, or Hegel and phenomenology. No, you, someone who uses the term dialectical materialism, you are someone who does not understand dialectical materialism. Dialectical materialism wasn't ever coined by Karl Marx. The first person who said it was this guy over here. I don't remember his name off the top of my head. Engels, for example, in Anti-Düring, use the term historical materialism, but essentially when we're talking about dialectical materialism, we're just talking about the views of Karl Marx philosophically as a whole. So when people use this buzzword, it is just that. It is a buzzword, and it exposes that they do not know what they're talking about. Because I've made a video before where I was talking about dialectical materialism, but I never used the term dialectical materialism because it's pretentious. And then someone was like, well, I know you don't know what you're talking about because you never use the phrase dialectical materialism. And it's funny that you actually bring up Hegel, but then tell me that I don't understand dialectical materialism, because there's nothing to understand about dialectical materialism. It's an oxymoron, because what is dialectics? Well, in a pre-Hegelian sense, when we talk about dialectics, we're just talking about an argument. It's just another way of saying good faith argument. So does dialectical materialism mean Karl Marx's materialist argument? No, it doesn't. Because as you at least demonstrate here, you understand that Karl Marx was influenced by Hegel. And Hegelian dialectics is insanely idealistic and incompatible with materialism. So the funniest thing about all of this is that dialectical materialism is an oxymoron. People will say, oh, well, Karl Marx was a materialist because he talked about materialism in On the German Ideology. But I don't ever remember him explicitly saying that he was a materialist, and even if he did, guess what? I identify as being correct. I guess that means I'm correct now, right? No, people can label themselves incorrectly. Marxism is about the synthesis of the oppressed and the oppressor, the working class and the ruling class, in order to eliminate the distinctions between the two. And that just doesn't make any sense from a materialist perspective, because what are the material conditions that you're changing such to change the structure of society? The only answer we get to that, obviously, is the abolition of private property. But why does Karl Marx think that the abolition of private property will change the material conditions such to elicit this change? He never actually explains it, really. It's just that, like I said before, capital is an extension of political power, and once you get rid of that, oh, well, suddenly things will work out. That's basically it. You are confusing Marxism with critical theory and Frankfurt School nonsense. No, you are just not educated. So I'm a supremacist because our current system normalizes oppression. If democracy means power of the majority, why are the minority bourgeoisie controlling the capitalist system and exploits the majority? No, you're a supremacist because if things are oppressed versus the oppressor, and power is the difference between the oppressed and the oppressor, then giving power to the oppressed simply makes them the oppressor. And so, when you're fighting for the rights of a marginalized group from this perspective, you are knowingly saying, hey, I want to make this marginalized group the oppressor. As for the second half of that, I don't know, ask Democrats why they keep shilling for Big Pharma. Clearly, you've never read any of the Communist Manifesto, it's right here in my hand. They acknowledge not only the proletariat, the bourgeoisie, but also socialist. So it sounds like you watched a video and assumed it was all you needed to know. You clearly don't read enough to be a reliable source for any information. Maybe don't take a Cliff Notes version and take 30 minutes to read it yourself. I don't even think it takes 30 minutes. Also, what does this comment even mean? Yeah, they talk about socialists and communists and what? What does that have to do with anything I said? Actually, the power the oppressors have is equitably distributed amongst the oppressed. And the oppressors themselves, why was there a period in between? So there is no oppressed in a proper Marxist government. No, that's not true at all. He explicitly says that. That is something where I can give you an exact quote. In his criticism of the Gotha program, he explicitly says that he is calling for a dictatorship of the proletariat. That is what Marxism is. Marxism is quite literally the supremacy of the working class. It is not about the equitable redistribution of wealth. I hate how Marxists will be like, oh, Marxism isn't when government do stuff, and then when you point out that, yeah, they're right, it's about all this social Hegelian dialectical nonsense, then they go, actually, Marxism is just about government do stuff, give money. Marxism is just about when we all sit around the campfires, sing Kumbaya, and get free stuff. God, it's crazy. If there's a lesson to learn from any of these raving, lunatic Marxists, it's that anytime a Marxist tells you to read Marx, it's because that person has never himself read Marx. But anyways, that appears to be all the comments for this time. That was so wonderful. If you guys have any suggestions or questions, leave them down below. For example, I'm thinking of starting a series where I start reading books in their entirety and giving very brief explanations as I do so, and then finally putting out a review on that book, what I think of what was being said, more than just explaining what the author meant. But who knows? I really don't like being cramped in this little sound stage I've made. So I'm gonna get out of it now. See you later!